Last Best Brewing and Distilling is a Calgary icon, located in the happening downtown Beltline district. This funky old historic building that not only manages to squeeze a whole lot of crowd-pleasing beer out of it, but has retrofitted the space into an impressive experience center for its craft-loving community and foodie fans. Don't let their beautiful dining space and fantastically fresh brews fool you though. Behind the scenes, this brewhouse is a Frankenstein nightmare according to the brewers, who have to struggle daily with this retrofitted, inefficient setup.
So this is a bullshit brewhouse.
Okay.
It fucking sucks.
Before we get into that, we talked to General Manager Ray Burton at Last Best and Phil Bryan, Director of Brewing for all 4 of Bear Hill Group's unique craft breweries located across the province. Welcome to the Craft Renaissance Project. My name is Matt, and I've been commercially brewing for over 15 years. While I love making beer as much as the next brewer, it's time to park the gumboots for a bit and share what I think that makes the craft beer world amazing. Join me as we take a deep dive into the craft beer craze boiling up here in Alberta, Canada. Of course, we talk about the beer, the ingredients that go into it, the process, and the community around these breweries who make craft beer a beautiful thing. Let us take you on this journey through the craft beer renaissance, here in the Barley Belt of Canada. The Craft Renaissance Project is presented by DME Process Systems, manufacturers of the gear that brews the beer. Visit dmebrewing.com to learn more about their brew houses, cellar tanks, and accessory equipment trusted by thousands of breweries around the world. So Ray, tell us about the name Last Best. Where did it come from? Where are its origins?
So the origin behind it actually goes back to an old marketing campaign that the Canadian government did in the late 1800s. Alberta was one of the last places to get settled, so the Canadian government put out the marketing campaign, Last Best Place to Settle in the West, which was Alberta. So our marketing team did a little digging, they really liked it, and after a few other names were tossed around, they landed on Last Best, and it seems to be working for us.
Yeah, very clever. I like that. Yeah, the last best place to settle. And just like the settlers clamoring for a stake in Canada's resourceful farmlands over a century and a half ago, Last Best Brewing took up the opportunity to claim some serious market share in the booming craft beer industry after a lift in Alberta's legislation around craft beer production. Remember that tweet Graham at Toolshed Brewing received in late 2013 from the AGLC that removed some serious roadblocks for his then startup brewery from episode 1? Well, by that time, the founders of Last Best had already years of experience in commercial brewing, their first operation being Jasper Brewing, which opened in 2005. More on that from our next episode. And obviously, you're entering into 2015. That's sort of when the craft beer movement in Calgary specifically is really starting to explode. So how have you found Last Best's sort of position in the industry has changed from 2015, where everybody's clamoring for craft beer, they can't get enough, to now where it's almost like the market's a little bit saturated, where there's a new brewery even still opening up, every few months?
It's been a really great journey, a learning experience for myself, but also the company and everybody involved. Like 2015 was like the boom of craft beer. The year or two after that in Alberta, we saw all of these breweries pop up, which has been so fantastic. But yeah, at the time it was like, okay, what can we do to get tap handles on restaurants, and what can we do to drive our sales, and how do we get the word out, that kind of thing. And it's evolved into everyone catching up to this craze and so many offerings. It's not that we're competing against one another, it's the philosophy in the community has been so great. It's as long as the piece of the pie grows with the consumer, everyone will have enough piece of that pie. So it's actually really super cool to work together with all these other breweries. Everyone's super encouraging and helpful for anything that anyone else needs.
I think of it in terms of like the development of Last Best specifically, that, we started as a beer company, and then we became a restaurant company, and in the restaurant our food program's grown, and we've started to balance those two things out. Meanwhile, we've had distilling bubbling away over here, doing its magic. We're really, really, really excited about what we're doing on the distilling front.
Okay.
Now, this is something which we've had coming down the pipe now for years.
Right.
And so, anybody who knows us, they know our beer, that's been great.
Yep.
Anybody who's been paying attention knows that we also make some fucking killer gems.
We might have to come back to Last Best another day to discover more about their distilling operations, particularly when their first batches of whiskey get released. which should be soon. Let's focus on beer for this episode.
So one of my favorite beers from Last Best is Show Pony. So tell us a little bit about that one. And I mean, I think it's a little bit something that brings us back home. So.
Yeah. So Show Pony was the very first brew that we ever did here.
Yeah.
When we first took over, we were brewing at a construction site, and Show Pony was always designed to be like that Australian style pale ale. Yeah. And it's kind of it irks me a little bit that style hasn't really caught on that much.
Agreed.
In North America. You know,
agreed.
like Australia's got this beautiful sort of stylistic thing going on where it's low alcohol, high hop flavor, high hop aroma, super drinkable, low finish and gravity, not very much sweetness.
Yeah, nice dry.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And just designed for literally beach crushing in the summer sun.
Yeah, that's not a lager.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And for whatever reason, that style hasn't really kicked off, you know, outside Australia.
Yeah, it's a shame.
And, you know, every time I go back, I just end up absolutely bloody crushing Pacific ales. You know, Stone and Wood, respect.
Yep.
They were the OGs of that style.
Yeah,
and,
that's right.
You know, Show Pony, honestly, was my kind of ode to Stone and Wood Pacific and James Squire, my alma mater.
Oh, yeah. I like James Squire
Their
too,
golden ale.
Yeah, right.
The biggest thing with this beer is that we've always taken a really conscious approach that it's never set. It's never the same.
Yep.
The recipe's always iterating. It's always changing. We're always tweaking process. We're always dialing it in.
Right.
We're finding right now that, and this is talking about the future shift.
Yeah.
Our thoughts of this beer today are that it's a little bit too heavy on the tropical. We want to bring it back to something which is a little bit more bright citrus.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay, so toning it down. That's interesting. I like that because a lot of breweries will say, this is our recipe, and they'll do everything they can over the next decade to keep it tasting as the same it did 10 years ago, which is almost a very macro approach to beer, whereas I do like that process you guys are going through. It's like we can constantly make it better, and it's okay that the beer we're drinking today is not the same as it was 6 years ago.
Exactly.
So that's a completely different approach, which I like. I mean, craft beer should be a little bit different.
It should be different.
Over its time. Yeah.
And we should like foster that evolution to
Yeah.
make things better. So I mean, really, the biggest thing that we try and do, and this goes across the board within all of Bear Hill, is that we don't define the beers by the recipe.
Right.
We define the beers by what they're trying to be from an experiential point of view.
Okay.
Yeah. So with this beer, you know, we say we want this to be a hop-forward, firm bitterness, solid malt backbone, but eminently drinkable.
Yeah.
And we want to move the aromatics to be as fresh and lively and luscious as possible.
Yeah, right. Yeah, it's a great beer.
If we start with that, that's our target.
Right.
And then the recipe is totally secondary to that. If we start with the idea and then build the recipe up to hit the idea, then that's the right approach.
I like that.
Yeah.
As opposed to forcing a beer on the community as well. I mean, they never seem to work. A lot of people think that, I love home brewers, and, there are home brewers that make that jump successfully. It does happen. But
me, many years ago.
Yeah. Well, even like Graham at Toolshed, right? I mean, the whole Toolshed is named after his homebrewing experience, right? Yeah. So it's interesting that, homebrewers think that they can just take what they do, a 5-gallon recipe, and, buy the equipment and people will come and drink it. No, there's a different approach. If you've got a community that likes your homebrew beer, perfect, you can build from there. But just because you brew it doesn't mean they'll drink it, right? So.
Well, I think it's the challenge, we're long past the time in the industry where just having great beer was going to mean that your brewery is a success.
Right. Because there's a lot of great beer out there.
There's a lot of great beer. And the reality is, if all you want to do is make great beer, stick to home brewing.
Yeah.
You can make beautiful, beautiful beer in your backyard system.
So a lot of people don't know the story about Tokyo Drift. It was just a seasonal, and it actually started as an IPA numbered program.
Okay.
So the idea behind that was we would make different recipes of IPA and get feedback from the community and our clientele.
Okay.
Because we want to make sure we're making and selling stuff that they really enjoy.
Fair enough.
Anyway, so we did IPA number 1, IPA number 2, IPA number 3, and the brewers decided to have a little bit of fun and start naming these after movies. So IPA number 3, Tokyo Drift.
Gotcha.
Tokyo Drift's the third movie in the Fast and the Furious.
Right, yeah.
But yeah, this started as a seasonal beer,
Yeah.
and we were only planning on doing 1 or 2 batches, just like any other seasonal release. And the feedback we were getting from everybody who was coming in was that this beer is mind-blowing. We haven't had anything like it in Calgary. It was right as it was transitioning from a West Coast style IPA like craze to the hazy New England style.
Right.
And people just loved it so much. We ended up making a 3rd batch of it. They kept wanting more. We made a 4th batch of it, and all of a sudden, it was becoming our most popular beer to sell inside the pub. So we decided to keep it on full time, and that's strictly because people loved it so much.
Oh, that's cool.
And that turned into, we ended up having to renegotiate some hop contracts because it became so popular.
Right.
And now it's turned into a seasonal release, and now it's just become a full-time release as one of our canned products.
That's awesome. Yeah, you were talking about the hops. I know in the brewing industry, if you make a good beer with hops, you got to make sure you can get those hops again.
It's a very important thing.
Yeah, it's a good problem to have when your seasonal beer that's not supposed to be a mainstay turns into one, and now you got to source more of the ingredients. So, yeah, that's awesome. So Tokyo Drift, fantastic.
Yeah.
So Ray, obviously we've got a lovely building up top, but you got to make the beer. We can sort of see a little bit of your brewery over there, but tell us about the history of the building and sort of the constraints that we're going to see when we go for a walk around.
Yeah, it's definitely deceiving. It's definitely deceiving when you come in and see this big, beautiful space on the pub side of things. The building's not quite a heritage building, but it's like really close. So we definitely had some construction constraints, getting the equipment in, and then also what we could do with it. And what ended up happening is our brewery is very, very tight, and it's very hard to move around. The building itself is actually confusing. So we have two separate basements. So we have one on the service side with the restaurant, and then one on the brewery side. And there's no way to get from one to the other if you're down there. You have to go out, back up, and back down. So it's challenging, but we make the best of it.
So this is a bullshit brew house.
Okay.
It fucking sucks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it makes good beer.
It doesn't want to.
It doesn't
Let me
want
put
to.
it that way.
So the skill of your brewers gets you there. Right.
It's an incredibly manual system. It's a bitch. We fight against it every single fucking day.
I don't know too many breweries where everything works properly.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
I'm
So
just
everybody's got
what?
some constraints.
Because it costs money.
I know. Yeah, you get what you can get, and then you make it work.
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about your brew system here. Obviously, we can see it's a 2-vessel system.
You bet.
What are we looking at? Yeah, we'll move over this way. What are we looking at on the left and the right?
So we have this arse-backwards system. We have a combined mash tun, kettle, and whirlpool.
Mash tun, kettle, and whirlpool.
Exactly.
Which is a bit odd.
Exactly. And with a separate lauter tun.
Okay.
With no heat and no rakes.
Right.
We do have a boat prop propeller inside our mash tun, which is great for mixing the mash, except that means that we can't get a decent whirlpool because there's this big fucking agitator in the middle of
breaks it up.
That breaks it all up. So we constantly battle with casting out good quality wort from this thing.
Okay.
But we wrestle with it.
Yeah.
We've managed to figure out how to make it work.
Yep.
So ultimately, process is pretty simple. Grain elevator that brings it up from downstairs, drops in, hydrate, mash. Once you've done your mash process, rest, pump it over to our lauter tun.
Right.
Let that sit for 20 minutes, critical important part, just so it has a chance to naturally settle before we start sucking it out.
Yeah.
And then lauter back into the kettle, boil, whirlpool in place, cast
Cool it
out.
in, cast out.
Yeah.
Right. So
That's
it's
like the 30-second brewer's to it. Every brewer's like, yeah, that's dumb, but it makes sense.
Yeah. Well, I mean, most 2-vessel systems, you'd think mash, lauter, 1 vessel, boil, whirlpool, other vessel. Whereas you go mash, lauter, boil, whirlpool.
Yeah.
A little different.
We bought this.
Yep.
We didn't build it.
Yep. Yeah. Well, I mean, we can see that your brew house is from '97.
There you go.
And you guys are from 2003. Excuse me.
There you go.
So you guys were 12 years later. So this had already been somewhere else.
Yeah.
And,
well, this was already in here. So this was the original Brew Brothers hit.
So this is what they were using for the brewery that was here before. Okay.
We've done an absolute shit ton of modifications, improvements, upgrades, basically redone the entire piping. Redid all the floors, all the rest of it. So, like I say, we've wrestled with this kit. We've made it work.
Right.
But it started out as a bit of a bitch.
Yeah.
The most important thing in our brew house, and this is what I want you to draw your attention to, this is the wall of Brewers Past, which I still actually have a couple of people who I need to get up
to
on
add
here.
up there. Yeah. Well, I don't see Natasha up there.
Tash is over there.
Oh, there she is.
Yeah.
I didn't see her. She was behind the door.
Tash is over there, and if I close the lid on the lauter tun, Tash is in the lauter tun, throwing the fucking bird at the lauter tun.
Yeah, because she hates it. Yeah,
Yeah, because it's fucking terrible.
Yeah. So you can say that you've trained and sent these brewers out into the world, and now they're flourishing in other breweries. So
It's honestly, man, that's the shit that matters to
Yeah.
me. So I
agree.
I get really pumped up about this shit.
So we'll just go back to the grain. Once you get the spent grain out of here by hand, out
Shovel.
this door, shovel.
Yep. Although there's a point of contention within the brewing team about whether a shovel or a rake is the best
better.
implement.
Okay. So to each their own?
Man. Yeah, very strategic decisions.
So when we get it out of here by hand,
yeah, drag the grain over here, pop open the chute, shovel the grain down, and then drag it back again.
Yeah, so it starts and ends in the same place, but it's got to go up and down twice.
Exactly. Rinse and repeat that process about 45 to 50 times, and then you've managed to grain out.
And how many brews can you get done in a day here, practically? I know there's water constraints and steam constraints.
We've fixed up a bunch of those things over the last few years. So we upgraded a hot water system. Feasibly, we can brew twice, but it's a bit tough if we're doing that as a double beer brew.
Right.
We can do a beer and a wash comfortably in about 14 hours. This is the seedy underbelly of Last Best. We have the beautiful restaurant up top, and then this is where shit gets done.
Precisely. So this is where all the grain starts.
Yeah. Some challenges with leaks and.
Well, you are in a 100-plus-year-old building, so you've got to make do with what you got.
So we just upgraded the grain handling here a year and a half, 2 years ago. New mill, new grist case, running up into our elevator upstairs feeding it into the brew house.
So you don't have a grist bin to store your milled grain, it just goes straight into where the scale is. But the scale and the grist bin are one and the same.
No, so we don't even have a scale.
Oh.
Yeah.
So it's
a bag weighs 25 kilos.
Yeah,
Count
but
the bags.
and then do you have a scale in here for the smaller specialty malts?
Somewhere.
Okay, so you'll just hand weigh out the specialty. There you go. Okay. So it just goes in there and straight up. Do you pre-mill the day before?
We pre-mill the day before into the grist bin.
Oh, so your grist bin is just downstairs, not upstairs. And obviously, you don't have space.
Exactly. Yeah. And then coming back to physical constraints, like our grist bin holds about 85 to 90% of what we need for an average batch because we didn't have enough space here. So
you have to mill that last few kilograms as you're mashing in.
Exactly. You have to throw a few extra bags into the grist bin during mash.
Gotcha. So as long as you write down what you've milled and need to mill,
then you should be good.
Okay, gotcha. So 25 kilo bags, one bag at a time, through the mill, just a 2-roll mill?
Just 2-roll mill.
Lovely, perfect.
This is where every brewer who works in Last Best gets to enjoy the glory of shoveling an entire fucking bed.
So this just looks like a retrofitted ducting vent.
Actually, no, it was a custom-built 316 stainless steel tube.
Really?
That we got made, specifically for this.
Jeez, okay.
Yeah, we chopped a hole upstairs. This was all structurally engineered because we were chopping holes in our floor.
Of course, right.
We reinforced it all with a bunch of angle bracket iron up on the top, the top side.
Oh yeah, I can see that. Yep.
This sleeve then fits inside that. So,
okay.
A
lot more engineering to it than it looks.
Exactly. It looks like a dodgy bloody piece of ducting, but actually no. I paid people money for the first time ever.
Well, I was about to say duct tape is a brewer's best friend in fixing things.
You're not wrong.
Yeah.
So then, brewers coming to shovel spent grain, shovel it into the tube up top, drop it down into our spent grain bins. We did have a whole pile of Grundies along this side of the wall, and we direct poured off the Grundies. What we found is that because we were selling about 3/4 of our beer in kegs out the back door, and only pouring about 1/4 of the beer that we made through the Grundies, then we actually wanted the flexibility of having more kegs and more keg storage.
Right.
So we just sold off almost all the Grundies.
So that was a big business decision, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome. And then this is the Grundies you were talking about. These are what you had all lined up across the wall?
Exactly. Okay. So we had these Grundies all the way down.
Right.
We were serving off those, but then we decided that it actually didn't give us the flexibility that we needed.
Right.
So we got rid of them and then preserved all that space for kegs. We have spirits handling tanks here with various gins in process. Which then we can either send to bottling or we can send to our new, about to be released, gin cocktails.
Cool. Yep. Awesome. I look forward to trying those.
Yeah.
Fantastic. All right, let's keep moving on.
Alrighty. And then the rest of the building is all of the shit that makes a brewery work.
Storage.
This is in the bottom of a deep, dark rabbit hole that brewers would actually nerd the fuck out over.
Yeah.
So
let's have a look.
So our old hot liquor tank died.
Yep.
And
I remember what it used to look like.
Exactly. It was a shitty old 3,000 litre horizontal dairy tank.
Yep.
there'd been so much stress corrosion cracking. It was the worst that I'd ever seen. It was the worst that our welder had ever seen.
Yeah.
And when the welder was in the tank trying to patch up a hole that was leaking everywhere,
A new hole would develop.
A new hole would propagate.
Yeah.
So he basically said, guys, I'm sorry, but it's fucked.
Yeah.
And we said, shit, we don't have a hot water tank in a brewery, not good. So we actually took 2 of our conditioning tanks, single wall, keeps it warm in the winter.
Yeah, it does. You can feel the radiant heat right now.
This is where you come when you want to
warm up. Yeah.
So 2 conditioning tanks, we shipped them to our welder and actually got him to reconfigure them. This is the most flexible hot water system I think I've ever worked with.
Okay.
So external steam heat exchanger, recirculation pump, pulls the water from either one of these tanks, runs it through here, steam comes in, heats the water up, going back in.
Right.
And then we have the piping here so that we return all of our hot water out of our heat exchanger. We can top up with fresh water, and then we can choose whether to use one tank, whether to use the other, or whether we link the 2 tanks together and just use them as one big vessel.
Right, and they're 25 hectoliter hot, so you got 50 hex in total.
Yeah,
roundabout.
Roundabout, yeah.
Okay.
So 27 flooded, call it 50 hex. Our glorious elevator.
Let's have a look.
Well, it's upstairs now.
Oh, it is. But this is the old style door with the open up and down.
That for the longest time people would get trapped in, and we had to have some,
Yeah, Ray said your bartender got stuck in there for about 45 minutes or so.
So this is the room where I trade sexual favors for Australian hops.
Right.
And right behind you have a whole pile of Galaxy, a whole pile
hops,
of Ella, a whole pile of Vic Secret. If you look over this wall, this is our American wall, tons of Chinook, tons of Mosaic, tons of Amarillo, tons of Citra.
So you've got a lot of variety. So do you keep varieties on hand for what ifs?
Yes,
Perfect.
all the time. We have a bunch of Nelson Sauvin, which we've got access to. We just used all the rest of our Motueka. But yeah, like I say, for whatever reason, I managed to trade sexual favors for hops.
Well, I know I came to you when I needed some Simcoe.
There you go.
Yeah.
Yep.
Beautiful.
So the benefit is we've been in the business long enough that we can get access to the hops that we want.
Last Best's commitment to creating community amongst the brewing industry is like no other. Their beer events and collabs are ones you don't want to miss out on. Ray and I chat about my personal favorite, their annual IPA Tap Takeover.
What a great night. It's depending on what you do here, it's either your favorite night of the year or your most hated night of the year. I know when I was bartending, it was more on the one side, but now that I've actually been able to be on the other side of the bar, it's definitely a blast. So, the Tap Takeover, we try to have breweries from all over Alberta, specifically mostly in Calgary, but we have Edmonton, Red Deer, Lacombe, Lethbridge, everybody around. And what we do is we ask them to give us a new IPA or one of their favorite IPAs that we do, and we essentially take all of our beer off of our draft lines. We have one of our IPAs that we want to focus on, but then we have 29 guest taps come in. We rearrange the entire room, we invite all the brewers and their sales staff down, and they call it Brewers Christmas.
Yes.
And I'm pretty sure no one in our industry gets anything done the day after.
No, or really that day.
Or that day too, we just have a really great time. We celebrate the style that's really thrown craft beer into the limelight over the last 8 years, and we have a blast and a lot of IPA.
Yes, I know my head usually hurts after the IPA days.
Another example of Last Best collaboration projects within the industry, Phil tells us a little bit about their partnership with Canada Malting.
We've had a great relationship with Canada Malting and everybody within GrainCorp for years. Now United Malt. So they were looking for tools that would help them manage their business better. And then we're looking at blockchain applications within the supply chain world.
Right.
And this is one of the areas where people are actually saying, okay, it's not just about Bitcoin. We've got this tool here which can help us look at supply chain better and make sure that we have data which is immutable, based on a whole pile of different companies talking together. Where the integrity of that data is one of the most important things. So Canada Malting was looking at this and saying, okay, they have all of that data. They can trace the malt which went into this all the way back to the individual farmer that it came from. And if they talk to the farmer, they can find out which bin it came from on his farm, which section it came from on his farm. And so the challenge then with Grain Corp's business is that they're, you know, multinational company. They operate in a bunch of different continents. They sell malt all over the world.
Yep.
And they were looking at, okay, how can we get a tool together which then bridges some of those gaps and those difficulties in communication? So we worked with them. We also worked with Red Shed Malting to do this as a test piece.
Okay.
So we tested, can we use blockchain, build in the back-end infrastructure, and then show the story of this barley came from this field on this farm. Red Shed sent that barley to Canada Malting to get malted. Then they shipped it back, and then Red Shed roasted it on small little batch roasting system, which they've got. And then they shipped it to us, and then we used it to brew a beer, which we termed blockchain, because who can resist a good pun?
Yeah.
So we made blockchain. We put the QR code like directly on the can, so you could literally scan the thing and then see the story of the barley that went into making the beer.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah. So that was 2019 that we did that project.
That's right.
And now the world, especially, you know, the blockchain world has moved on quite a bit, where we're starting to see these tools come out in terms of like grocery supply chains, you know, sustainability, looking at these ways in which we can incentivize things. We want to get that story, who they were with, what they did, you know, that day when they drank it, the people that they were drinking it with, and then what they thought of it after the fact. That's where we're looking at blockchain and saying, can we create immutable records of people's lives, of people's stories, and of the stories behind our products?
Cool.
This is where we're looking at it and saying, if we start to digitize physical things, then those physical things start to have a story of their own.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Whenever I have people coming to Calgary and they ask where should they go, Last Best is on the top of the list for bars. The food here is great, the atmosphere is great, so you definitely are a spot in Calgary that I tell people to go to. But how do you see Last Best sitting in the community, and then again within the bigger picture of Bear Hill, and then the culture within?
The vision and, you know, the values that we have at Bear Hill is that we let the communities that we're in shape the direction of each of our businesses.
Right.
So rather than us saying, this is the concept that we have and this is what we think is going to work in this town for these reasons.
Right.
We open up with that idea and then throw it out the window.
Okay.
And let the local community of Calgary dictate what Last Best becomes.
Cool.
What that means is that we fuck up a whole lot. You know, we make a bunch of mistakes, and then the most important thing is that we're actually making those mistakes and then changing things afterwards.
Right.
So we've done that on every single facet of our business. From beers that we produced that we thought people would like that didn't work out, from menus that we thought were suitable for Calgary which didn't work out,
right,
to community initiatives which we've done which didn't work out. And the most important thing is that we start a conversation with our guests, our customers, our retail customers out in the big wide world, and to get them to influence where we move things in the future. And it really becomes a bit of a back and forth. You know, we want to have a meaningful conversation with, like I said, our guests, our customers, to shift and redefine what Last Best is.
Thanks for joining us for the second episode of the Craft Renaissance Project, featuring one of my personal favourite Calgary hangouts, not only for the reasons we've already shared, but for their seriously addictive Korean barbecue wings. In the next few episodes, we hit the road from the prairies to the Rockies. Make sure you subscribe, leave a like and a comment below. Drink safe, and remember, the best beer is the one you're enjoying right now. Cheers.